Hi, this is Dr. Mark Sehl from the YouTube channel Therapy for the Heart. It's good to be back here after a few weeks of not working, so getting back into the groove here. So this is the talk about mental health. It's the law, and you may or may not know that New York State enacted a law that requires mental health to be taught in elementary, middle, and high schools. It's required. I think that's fantastic because nowhere in the educational system that I can remember that there's been this emphasis on the importance of mental health being as a major requirement in school. It's not, the school doesn't have a form, there's no prescription about the way you have to teach it, but it's just that it needs to be addressed. And so many things come from good mental health, or if you're not mentally healthy and you don't think well about yourself and don't have good confidence, then how are you going to appreciate the courses that you're taking? If you have good self-confidence and good mental health, then you're more appreciative of what you're going to be learning. And it makes the core curriculum much more important to you. But if you're very depressed and anxious, and if you don't have good mental health, you're going to things are going to happen that are going to interfere with your ability to learn. If you don't feel good about yourself, you're not going to apply yourself. You could have self-destructive tendencies that you're not aware of because it's not being addressed. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody knows about it. And often children do have these self-destructive tendencies. They don't want to do well because they're afraid, so they won't try hard because they're afraid that if they try hard they'll fail. So they'd rather fail than try hard. They'd rather be a failure than try harder and then end up being a failure, which doesn't make sense. But there's some logic to it. So those sorts of things affect our children. Fights at home, and that are never addressed in terms of how the impact of those fights on the children are. The alcoholism in families, stress. I mean, many people are overstressed, and they have a hard time living in this world which expects so much, and also doesn't have, for instance, the income to support people, like especially people who are poor, and they have much more stress because it's bread and butter issues that they're contending with, not just other issues too. So there's so many variables, and this brings me back to when I made a talk quite some time ago. It was here about going to a class that we professionals were invited, parents were invited to talk about what they do, and as a part of careers, looking forward to careers and giving some information to children about what actually you do is what a career. My career was psychotherapy, so I remember that day when I said, did I work with people and their problems, and a few hands shot up, and somebody said, well, my problem at home is that when I talk, my mother doesn't listen. And somebody else shot up a hand and said, well, I'm often depressed at home. And I was thinking, man, if only we could have these things addressed directly, and the symptoms, seen, like poor all of a sudden poor school performance, or missing school because of nobody knows why, because maybe counselors are not really tuned into it. So many things could have been done if only those kids and their families could have been treated separately or better together, so that they could have a better way of dealing with communication between them, so that they could understand each other more and not fight or not be rejected, or parents be having alcohol problems and they don't really realize how the impact of their alcohol problems on children and their performance in school, because they don't want to perform because there's so much conflict. They don't want to, they can't, they're overwhelmed. So what a law. Now it's a requirement. Yeah, so I can't say that my wish came true. I was wishing it, but it's not because I wished it. It's just because finally somebody got some sense and said, we need to have this as a requirement. I think what was it? Niagara Falls School District, they did a study, and they found that 15% of the students considered suicide, and 10% actually attempted it. That was a big push to get something moving like that. And what the Niagara School District is doing now, or has been doing, is hiring more psychologists and social workers to work with people, and particularly from the age 3 to 7, because that's when the vulnerable age, that's when the problems start, and if you can pick them up very early on, then you won't have to address them later on. I think it brings me right back to the case of Sehl, where he went to therapy because his mother thought he had the problem of communication. He didn't have the problem, and the mother had the problem because she was seeing Sehl as her mother, who disregarded her. So Sehl's lack of response, now he's very young, he's 8 months old, but it starts very early, 3 to 7. Well, he's 8 months old. And so his mother courageously went to therapy. That's a hard thing to do for mother, and she found out that it wasn't her son's problem communicating with her, it was her problem not being able to see. She was seeing her mother and her son. The passivity, she interpreted as passivity and not being excited about seeing her. She missed the fact that, well, her son was overstimulated by her trying to get his attention all the time. So that was remarkable. It's just one case, where it made all the difference, because if that didn't happen, he would have blamed himself for problems between he and his mother. Inevitably, it would have happened that way. He would have blamed himself. So many things can happen now with people being, this is like a conversation now in school about mental health. Teachers are going to be thinking about it. They're going to be thinking how to address this subject with their children. Now families can be a part of all of this too. Families will be more attuned to mental health because they're understanding that their children are in fact being taught mental health. So maybe those children will have a conversation with the mothers and parents about what their experience is in the class, and take it home, and maybe they will have conversations with their family, because the family hopefully will be interested in knowing, oh, what are you learning in class? Right? That's amazing. This is amazing law. The only other state that had this law is Virginia. They had a mandatory same that they had to teach mental health in their courses. 2 states in the United States have it. That's it. And I'd love to see that somebody push for these kind of requirements to be across the board in all states, because we need mental health. There's not one state that's not going to need this kind of focus on mental health. It's so missing. And you know what is missing too? The people who provide those services of mental health, their funds are getting cut back. And as we've seen in other videos, they had funds cut back by SAFE. Said they wanted to make schools safe because of all the shootings. And that's terrorizing. Talk about mental health when you have something like that happen in a school. And it's not only that school, it's also other schools, other children think about, oh, could that happen to us? Could that happen to me? Parents get nervous about it. So, and then they go back and they make these programs, safe schools. And what did they do in 2019? Apparently they're going to cut the budget for it. So action has to take place in terms of people's welfare and well-being, children's and families. The most important, that's the substance of our lives, our families. And our families are in trouble. Minorities they get short-shrifted in terms of when it comes to mental health services. There's studies, and I've talked about these. Minority groups get short-shrifted about the availability of mental health services to them. This is a statistical fact. And even in our own profession, they did a study when they were offering mental health services to, there's a sample of therapists, 320, and they did a study, and there were help seekers. So actors pretended to be upper class, lower class, middle class, black, white women. So what they were doing was that they were calling up and asking for an appointment to these 320 therapists, and all with different scenarios. Lower class, financially black person, or would be calling up asking for an appointment. A white woman would be, and they knew how to say that they were black or white or whatever by the use of their vocabulary, their names, sometimes, whatever, however they fixed their study up. And like there was one black lower class male, and he called 80 therapists for an appointment, and none of them responded to him to give him an appointment. But white women got the great appointments. Like a good appointment would be like after work when you come home and you're not going to have to see somebody at 8 o'clock, maybe 6 o'clock, and you can get an appointment with a therapist. And white women were given those. So we have these differential treatments in this society, and it's terrible. I mean, this is my own profession that I'm talking about. So we have to address so many things in school, because all these things, discrimination and prejudice and bullying, all affect our children's mental health. 15% were considering it, and 10% attempted suicide. That's a huge number. And we've talked about how for the age range of, I guess it was 15, 16 up to 24 is the highest. It's increasing. Suicides in general in the population of that age group are increasing. So what are we doing wrong? We're not doing something right. It should be the other way around. We should be reducing the incidence of children being affected by their problems and lack of attention and lack of support, from whatever, from the school, from their family. And the families don't get support either, because they have so much on their mind, and particularly if they're dealing with a lot of economical issues, it's just a tough life out there. So this law is so important, and I'm so happy about it for all the families who are contending with such stress in the schools and the children. So maybe they'll all get a break now. It's a requirement. Mental health is a law. Yay. Okay, so this is Dr. Mark Sehl. I'm signing off. This is Tuesday with Mark. I guess it is Tuesday, isn't it? Yes, it is. So nice to have you here listening, and nice to be back talking with you. And we'll see you soon. So this is Mark Sehl signing off. YouTube Therapy for the Heart. Mental health is the law. Okay. Bye-bye for now.